Tabitha Nolan. This is part 2 of my first podcast where we spoke to Jemma Fry. We both broke it up into 2 parts because it was quite long, and I finally managed to get it onto the system. So I hope you enjoy watching or listening.
I did have one question. What would you tell, because we were kind of talking about this, and we'll just finish on this topic with this question, if you like. And what would you say to your 16-year-old self if you could speak to your 16-year-old self?
I think I'd tell her that the girl she doodled in those exercise books is the girl she's going to become.
Ah,
That
that's giving me goosebumps.
well, and you know, very physically as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I have less hair than I would like, but
you drew.
the girl that I drew had the same hairstyle that I have now.
Oh, really?
And the clothes that I drew her in, this is the style of clothes that I wear now. I drew like a cowl neck sweater, and I wear a cowl neck sweater in the winter. And it's like that woman that I drew in that exercise book, age 16, is the woman I became.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes. And I think just letting that 16-year-old girl who everyone thought was a boy know that she'll get there. That everyone will know who she is. I think that would be, though it might be a long journey and it might not happen the way she thought it would, but that's the message, is that you get
I just
there.
wish that there had been someone there for you at that time. That's what I would wish, that person saying to you, it's okay, you will get where you need to be. You know, that's that hand on your shoulder would have been.
And that was never going to happen because I would never have said anything to anyone.
No.
I think going back, had I been born now with all the access to resources on the internet and to peers and I mean, I know there are trans kids at the school where my children go, and they're just trans kids. It's okay, you know, it's not a big deal.
So let's talk about Doctor Who then. Who is Doctor Who? I think I watched on a Sunday afternoon when in the 70s or early 80s some sort of Doctor Who he had the stripy scarf.
That was Tom Baker. Yes, that was wonderful. Those are the years when I was a kid. That was my escapism. That was where I went to get away from all the thoughts of dread and despair.
So it's been your saviour.
It was my outlet. That's where I went. And it's only recently that I've started to look at Doctor Who on a kind of metaphysical level and try to understand what it meant to me. Why Doctor Who? Why didn't I watch
Blue Pig?
I could have watched anything else. It's like there's so much on TV, but what was
Wurzel
it?
Gummidge.
Right?
Wurzel Gummidge.
Wurzel Gummidge. Yeah.
That's who I relate to, Wurzel Gummidge.
But I think Doctor Who is really important because it's fundamentally about identity.
Yeah.
And that's the field of work I'm in now. I work in IT security. So a lot of stuff that I do is about identity and access management. Now, who are you and are you allowed to do what you're trying to do? That is fundamentally what my job is about.
Yeah.
So the computer system has to know, well, who are you? And so you give a username or an email and a password or a fingerprint or something, that there are these things that are representational of you. And I always thought it was funny, the paradox of the word identity, that we take it to mean something unique, something that is only assignable to you. I mean, there is nobody else that has your identity. It is unique to you.
No, it's like DNA.
But the word identity means identical to something.
Oh, well, that is. Yeah.
So it can simultaneously mean uniqueness.
Yeah.
And
when you identify a plant, you know, looking at my lifestyle, when I identify a plant, it's to find out how the similarities of it to make sure that I've got the right plant in front of me.
And it is about categorizing things that you know about that thing. You know, what's the shape of the leaves? What's the color of the leaves? What are the stalks like? When does it grow? Does it flower? All these things that are facts about that thing that help you identify. And that's the way that computer systems identify you. That you know, if you've given a password, if you've given a fingerprint, if it's done a retina scan or face recognition, something that will give the computer more reassurance it's you. And so then you start thinking about, well, how does Doctor Who do that? Because every few years the Doctor is a different person. And you know that it's maybe a young person, maybe old, now male or female. You know, the new Doctor Who is Jodie Whittaker. She's brilliant, and from Sheffield as well, which is weird because I am. So my love of Doctor Who is like,
I have a friend who looks exactly like her.
Oh wow,
I do.
Have a selfie taken with her.
Honestly, she gets told it quite a lot.
Did you have my signed photo?
Oh wow.
So it was very meaningful to me that when Jodie Whittaker became the Doctor, the first female Doctor, that her first episode was set in Sheffield, where I was born. It was almost like someone had gone rummaging around in my memories and just made a Doctor Who that was just for me.
Yeah, this is for you, Gemma.
This is the first female Doctor. She's in Sheffield. She's got a Sheffieldish accent, and it was like, I kind of lost my accent since I moved out of Sheffield. Comes back when I go back there. But, And when I got married, we're talking about getting married, and we kind of made a big celebration of the day, and we made it Doctor Who themed.
Yeah,
I love Doctor Who so much. So I dressed up as Doctor Who, and on the day that we had the wedding, there was a headline that said, Doctor Who may regenerate into a woman, because Matt Smith announced that he was leaving the show on that day. On the day of our wedding.
Wow, there's too many coincidences here.
Next morning, the headline was, Doctor Who may regenerate into a woman. I had dressed as Doctor Who the previous day, and 1 week later was when I started my transition.
That's
nobody me apart from Ellen.
And obviously that newspaper.
Yes, the newspaper. How did they get the idea? Yes.
Newspaper. Have you got the
Yes, it was kind of spoiler.
Spoiler alert.
So this whole concept of identity runs through Doctor Who, that it's the same person, even though they look different, that they may have a different personality, they may have different face or different gender. And so it became important to me, because what are those things that persist through the Doctor's life that mean it's the same person regardless of how they appear? And it was on Doctor Who, it's like moral code. It's some facts of biology, like there's always going to be two hearts. There's going to be the TARDIS, like the ability to travel into space. All those things, and this. But overall, it's this sense of what's right. That there is this deep moral code in the character that understands what's evil and what's good, and understands where there's that grey area where it overlaps and you have to make those complex decisions. And so I started to relate to this during transition, because it was like, okay, so what are the elements of me that are going to persist?
Do you have to develop a whole new personality, or can you still refer to your old likes and personality traits and things?
Yes, and but it's not just
rules up.
There are no rules.
Exactly.
There are no rules. It's like I could overnight adopt a totally different persona. But what I wanted to do was
someone else.
But obviously, having had that mask on all my life and wanting to be as real as possible, it was important for me just to be natural. And the impact it had on my life was dramatic. I became an extrovert, whereas I'd been an introvert, and that was overnight. I worried when coming up to transition. It's like, I'm gonna have to go out and present as a woman the whole time, and like 24 hours a day. And I wanted to do that, but also it was scary, And I thought, that's going to be, I'm going to be so nervous. The first day when I leave the house to go to the office, I'm going to be terrified.
Yeah. Did you have to develop a new laugh and stuff, like a girly laugh?
I don't know. I hadn't, because what I'd done, I didn't. My voice that I use now is my natural voice, but
your voice hasn't changed.
No, it's the same voice.
Yeah,
but it felt almost like I'd kind of grown into the voice rather than.
Yeah, you do know what, you filled the edges out. You've filled out the frilly edges.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be as genuine, as real as I possibly could be.
Yeah.
And voices are always difficult for trans people because and phone conversations are challenging because you pick up the phone and the voice is the only thing you've got to go on judging what that person's like, whether they're happy, whether they're sad, whether they're male.
But then nowadays, like Benson, like with some of our bills, like, my name's on it, but he'll ring and make the phone call, and he's like, nobody dares ask me, because they'll be like, are you Tabitha then? And he's like, yes, I am Tabitha, because things are sort of so, we're politically correct.
And I'm sure that there's definitely an element of that, of people recognizing that not everyone's going to have the voice I expect them to have.
Yes.
But there have been occasions when people have got hold of my phone number in association with my old name, my dead name.
Yeah.
And they phoned up.
Is it?
Sorry? It's a dead name.
Dead name, yeah.
The name that I had been given at birth, and that I've now. It's gone. I do not use it, do not like hearing it. But occasionally marketing companies will phone up and say, hello, is dead name there? And it's surprising that they say, is it your husband?
Aye.
Know who they're calling.
Yes.
They hear my voice.
Yeah.
And even though that's all they've got to go, they don't know who they've called.
No.
They just know they're after someone with a male name.
Yeah.
And the person who's answered the phone is not male.
Is not what they're expecting it to be. So that must be another tick in the box for you.
It was a I mean, talk about validation. That's as validation as it gets for a trans person, that when you pick up the phone and somebody assumes you're female from your voice, someone who doesn't know you, someone who doesn't even know they've called you.
Yes.
And that is incredibly validating.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
So anyway, that was a bit of a detour. I don't know where we were going because I got lost where we were in the story.
We'd started talking about Doctor Who, and we were talking about identity, which voice is part of identity, isn't it?
Voice, yeah, that's right. So it's all these different characteristics of identity which persist. And there is when I was in October, I'm going to do a presentation hopefully in Athens, but COVID-19 permitting, of course, to some industry peers about identity. And I'm going to bring in these concepts of how computers see people and recognize people, and how we decide whether you can trust somebody. And also I wanted to bring in this idea of social identity and a kind of psychological understanding of what identity is, that a person has their own sense of identity, of who you are. And there's a quote, if I can't remember it exactly, but it's something like that identity is the self-construal. It's how you perceive yourself as you were in the past, as you are in the present, and how you aspire to be in the future. And that is Professor Weinreich, who was at Ulster University, I think, who came up with that definition. And I really like that. And it resonates with Doctor Who, because there are several quotes from Doctor Who that have that exact same story in them. That the one I quoted earlier right at the beginning, which was we're all different people all through our lives. And that's okay, that's good. You've got to keep changing as long as you remember all the people you used to be. And there's another one when Jodie Whittaker says you can change. We're all capable of great change, that you can evolve whilst being true to who you are. And that, that's looking into the future about who you want to be and knowing who you are.
I always say to my boys that they're the authors of their own book, and I think now I've said it so many times that they probably don't actually hear what I'm saying, but you know, they'll label themselves as, oh, I'm stupid, or I'm too, you know, different negative terms if they're having a bad day. And I'll say, you know, you're the author of your own book. You know, you whatever's gone on beforehand has gone on beforehand, but nothing. The future is yours for the making, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nobody's
standing there with a gun against your head saying, you know, because you have been X, Y, and Z in the past, that you have to be like that in the future. You know, anything's doable. I guess we've all got baggage, but you know, let's draw a line under it and carry on.
Yeah, you do, and it is difficult finding ways to carry that baggage around. And it's like I was saying about going back and revisiting Life of Brian and trying to come to terms with it, despite the impact it had on my life.
Yeah.
So it's just recognizing that baggage has made you who you are now, but it doesn't need to define who you are in the future.
Yes. Yeah.
And being able to do that and separate, you know, that's something that I can't change, but this is something that I can.
Yeah.
And you know, just be the best person you can be. That's really what I get from Doctor Who, because the Doctor is always the best person he or she can be.
Yes.
And that's kind of my religion, if you like.
Yeah. It's lovely though that you've had that to refer to throughout your life. You know, that what do they call it? It's like a solid thing. What's that?
It's like it's a rock. It has been my rock. It's been my stable ground.
Yes.
And that's an interesting
like your little family.
Yeah, it has. I mean, it has been a community as well that I've met friends through Doctor Who, and
I'm so disappointed in myself that I'm not a you know, I'm not an avid Doctor Who watcher, because I
too late to start.
Yeah, that's true.
Too late to start.
Yeah.
I've met so many good friends through Doctor Who.
Yeah. So, are there any regret? Do you have any regrets of, not necessarily of your whole life, but of transgender transitioning?
And this is really interesting, that I don't have any regrets at all, and that it has totally uprooted my life. It's changed my family life. It's destroyed my marriage. It's thrown me. I mean, the consequences of the marriage breaking down is that my nature is to cut off ties with things, like burn bridges. I do that all the time, and it's that's something I can't do when I've got kids, and because I can cut off my relationship with people who betrayed me, but I can't cut off my relationship with my kids. So trying to come to terms with how I do that is a challenge for me, certainly. But so regrets, no, because I would have regretted more not doing it. Getting to the end of my life and looking back and wishing I had, and not being able to change it again. And had I transitioned earlier, I wouldn't have my kids.
No.
And that's a significant thing.
It happened when it happened for a reason, didn't it?
Yeah. And I have to take solace in that, because I mean, had I had a different life, if I had been able to transition in childhood, which is what, you know, ultimately I would have wanted for myself, I would not have been able to have kids at all.
No.
And that would have been something I'd have to come to terms with. But then there are lots of people who aren't fertile, who can't have kids of their own. And it would be no different to any of them, the way they approach their lives. So no regrets, but had my life played out differently, I wouldn't know any different. I wouldn't have known that this particular life I'm living now was an option to me.
No.
So I wouldn't miss it.
No, but that's a scary thought sometimes, isn't it?
You wouldn't miss your own kids because you.
No, I worry about that. I worry about the kids I haven't had.
Yes. Oh my God.
You know, but and what's been the best thing about becoming the woman that you are?
To be honest, it's just that realization that people see me, that when people look at me, they see a woman, they see the person I always imagined myself to be, that I always felt I was from being 5 years old, that they see that person now. And that is worth so much just in its own right. The other thing that is that brings me great joy is my body, is that the trauma I went through in puberty of watching my body become more and more male.
Yeah.
And now I look at myself in the mirror and it's not
a fantastic figure.
Thank you.
You have.
Like, and I'm lucky like that.
Yeah.
And I know there are lots of people who aren't so lucky, who transition and their frames and the body shape is
you were blessed with good genetics, good female genetics, weren't you?
and that's why it's so important that when we were going to talk about trans rights and there's this whole thing about going into bathrooms, and I can quite easily walk into a woman's bathroom without being challenged, but there are other trans people who can't, and that privilege that I have of being able to do that it's undeserved. It's unjust when there are other people in exactly the same position as me
who haven't been blessed
don't have that privilege. And it's
like,
not,
for example, if like you said about large hands and things like that, there's not a lot, I should imagine there's not a lot you can do about that.
I know. I remember
large and wide shoulders and things like that, you know.
I have big hands, and it's like
I've got tiny hands.
I was on the tube one day in London, and for some reason I became very, very self-conscious of my hands sitting on the tube. I was on a long journey going, it was going to take about 40 minutes to go where I was going, and suddenly I became very conscious of the fact I had huge hands, and I was sitting there going, must be staring at me.
Bored.
But they weren't. People don't.
No, and I know loads of women with big hands as well, and men with small hands. So
yes, yeah. It's so funny that when I transitioned, when I first told Ellen I was going to transition, she had one worry, and it was that I would become a shrinking violet, that I would basically become so shy and self-conscious.
How wrong could you have been?
I know. Did she know me at all? I mean, why?
I could have told her that, and I only met you once at the beginning.
Yeah, but this is what she worried, and like I said, it did occur to me that I might be that, and I might be nervous on my first day, and I didn't finish that story, did I? That on my first day going to work, after I transitioned, I had bags of confidence. I remember walking across the road to the train station, getting on the train, and thinking,
swinging your umbrella.
Yes. I was totally giving it. Twerking.
Let's do this.
No, but I basically, it was just confidence. It was walking into work. Everyone knew what was going to happen, and nobody made it hard for me, which is good. But I had a meeting that morning with we were doing a massive contract, one of these big government contracts for IT services, and so we had a meeting with the lawyers to actually go through the contract, and I'd never met the lawyers before, and so it was my first day presenting in as a woman, going into this meeting with a bunch of lawyers that I'd never seen before to talk about a massive contract that was about that thick.
Oh my goodness.
And, I was absolutely on fire. I was being very confident with what I knew. I was being outspoken, and when they argued, I was able to argue back, and I felt like I'd got more confidence than I'd ever had in my life before. And it was the complete opposite of what I'd feared. I'd feared that I would be that shrinking violet that Ellen.
Do you think it was like, because after so many years you were finally where you wanted to be, and it was like an unleashing?
I'll tell you what it was not having to wear a mask. It was the amount of energy I was expending trying to put on this persona that was not me.
And you could
and
just
then
be
suddenly,
free.
I don't need to do that anymore. And all that energy was then focused on being a good employee.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant.
Yeah. What a waste of life up to that point.
Absolutely. I not only lost my childhood, I lost so much of my adulthood as well. Through not being the person that I was.
Yeah.
And
but you are now.
Yeah, I am. I know, and it's been a learning experience as well, because the aspects of identity that I talked about are how you perceive yourself, but there's another aspect, and that's how other people perceive you.
Yeah.
And although I'd got a handle on how I perceived myself and how I wanted to present myself, I hadn't really got a handle on how other people saw me. So I started out with the assumption that people would see a trans woman. They would go, that person used to be a man, or that person is definitely trans. And that's what I assumed. And I was absolutely knocked for six when people assumed that I was cisgender female. And it happened a couple of times when I was talking about my kids, and people started asking me my experience of pregnancy. And I was like, well, I've never actually been pregnant.
That was one of my questions, actually. Do you find that I've got so many questions I haven't asked you? I could talk to you for another like 4 hours.
Yeah, unless we can make this a 2-hour interview if you like.
Yeah. I'm just wondering how whether we've lost our listeners.
I hope not.
I don't mean it like that. I mean, like, you know, there's kids that need feeding and there's animals that need feeding, and stuff like that. I'm good.
We can split this into 2 parts.
You'll have to do that for me.
Okay, deal.
Yeah. What I've lost my train.
We're talking about people asking me my experience of pregnancy.
Oh yes, yeah. So I still got
there's a guy I work with who I'd been working with him for about 2 years, and he asked me this question. We were outside. I was having a vape outside. We lost something.
No, I'm just thinking, what was the question? And I kind of inferred that I'd written it down, but
we can.
Yeah, but it was important. It was important.
Well, let me digress into the story about my work colleague who, having known me for about 3 years, and I am absolutely positive he knew I was trans.
Yeah.
And he still asked me my experiences of pregnancy.
Oh.
And it was like, and then I said, well, I've never been pregnant. And then there was a look in his face. He sort of, and I don't know if a penny dropped for him at that moment.
Do you think he's disassociated you from your previous personality?
Well, he'd never known me previously. It was in my current work where I'd not transitioned. I'd transitioned in a job. And so it just dawned on me that he didn't know. He'd worked with me for 3 years, and he had no idea. My hairdresser asked me a question the other day that made me realise she had no idea I'm trans. I've been seeing her for a year. And it's like, I don't think I am particularly feminine. I don't wear a lot of makeup. I just wear like baggy tops and jeans. I don't go out of my way to present in a female way.
No.
And people assume I am. And that is a privilege. It's absolutely a privilege.
Yeah, it's not like you do see some people who transition and it's so blatantly obvious. But then also there are people who you think have they transitioned, and they probably aren't.
Oh God, I have a colleague who is a cisgender female who went to the hospital to maternity services for an ultrasound and was turned away because the receptionist thought she was a trans woman and therefore needed X-ray for whatever was wrong with her. So she went down to X-ray and they went, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be having an ultrasound."
I would have smashed her up, the receptionist. What?
I could see why, because she is very masculine in her appearance, but she is very much a cisgender woman, and she was pregnant at the time, and to be in that situation, I mean, that's really when we were going to talk about trans rights, and the opposition to trans rights is all based around men passing themselves off as women. But the idea that you have to start policing what people look like, you have to start making judgments. Do I let that person in? Can I trust that person based on what they look like? And if you start doing that, you're going to start not only offending people, you're going to start excluding people who should not be excluded. And that's wrong. And I'd get very vocal about trans rights, obviously, because it directly impacts me, but also because I know the impact it has on women that I know who are not trans, and that I know a lot of butch lesbians who are constantly taken for men because of the way they present themselves. And they are going to be impacted by these kind of policies about, you can't let trans people into ladies' toilets. And it really frustrates me when the argument is always about making women and girls safe. That safe from what? From trans people? They say, oh no, we love trans people. It's the men pretending to be trans that men don't need to pretend to be trans to attack women.
No.
And there's a story the other day about a man who just walked into a woman's toilet and assaulted a woman in there. He didn't have to put on a dress to do that.
No.
It
shows how far people don't think about what they're saying, really, isn't it? And it's how narrow-minded they are.
I think it's worse than that. I think it is that people who oppose trans people's existence use these arguments to try and sway people who don't have an opinion either way. And if you can spin it and say it's a threat to your existence that trans people might come into your toilet, then that is going to sway people who hadn't had an opinion before.
Or haven't got the intelligence to actually look up and read about
Think about it and actually go, is that valid? Is that a real thing that happens? And
I think a lot of people expect like the government to think for them as well, don't they? Rather than making up their own minds about things.
Yeah, and then to be honest, the law is quite clear at the moment. It says, trans people have to be recognised as trans, as the gender they have transitioned to, and that we have to treat them in that way with dignity and respect. And that is common sense to me.
Is that from day one when you decide to do that?
There is, in the Equality Act 2010, there is protection for gender reassignment from the moment you express an intent.
All right.
And in fact, I was going to talk about my colleague who's turned away from maternity services. That was discrimination because they perceived her to be trans, even though she wasn't. That is protected in the Equality Act as well. Even if you're not trans, but someone perceives you to be, that protection that you have, she could have sued them for breach of the Equality Act. And that's important because it is equality. It's the same applies to everybody. You can't discriminate on the basis of your gender identity or sexuality or any. And
the onus is on the perceiver, isn't it? It's not. I shouldn't be perceiving somebody else as something. The onus shouldn't be on the person who.
Being prejudiced on the basis of who someone is. And that's, being trans is something you can't change. It's why it frustrates me when it's like, when did you choose to become a woman? Well, I didn't. I've always been a woman. I've never known any other way. And the distress I had through my whole life was because I was trying to be a man and I wasn't a man. And that's what caused that distress. So that this idea that it's a lifestyle is bullshit. There is no way that I could have been, because I tried for decades to be something I wasn't, and it would have killed me. No question, it would have killed me. So yes, trans rights is something I get very vocal about, but I think the important thing is being able to recognize why people have negative opinions. And when people talk about threat to women and girls from trans people, like, okay, that is coming from a real fear. There is something there that is genuine, that is driving that thought process. That's why it is so compelling to believe that, and therefore to campaign against trans rights, because so many people do. So what is it? And I think that is where feminism comes in, because it is this whole idea that the patriarchy is oppressing women in ways that are not as overt as they used to be. That, you know, in the past it was quite overt that women were lower class, and it was very blatant. But now it's much more. It's more. What's the word? Controlled. It's like the pay gap is not something you can put your finger on and say, well, clearly women are earning less, but there's so many arguments that say, yes, but that's because women do these jobs, and so, but they do those jobs because of the patriarchy, and that it's because women aren't supported in the way that men are, and that they, you know, taking off maternity leave, and that impacts then the ability to earn money, because when you go back to work you feel like you've got a gap, and men don't have that. So it's the different oppressions are not as overt, but they still exist. So, and I think that's, you know, that's why these stories about trans women are, they click in people's heads, and it's like, yes, I'm afraid of men because men attack women. But then you look at the statistics and they say that transgender women are as susceptible to domestic violence and sexual violence, if not more so than cisgender women. That violence happens not only because they're women, but because they're trans as well. And that compounds the risk.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
So when as a trans woman I'm being cast as a predator entering a woman's space, the reality is that I am a victim as well, that I have been sexually assaulted, that I am at risk of that. And if the alternative to using that woman's space is to use a man's space, then that's putting me at even more risk. And that is terrifying to me. And it's for there's an imagined threat that trans people make it dangerous for women and girls, but it's an actual threat to exclude trans women and make them use men's facilities. That is an actual existential threat to trans people, and that is why I get so terrified when I hear stories about, you know, when I read Mumsnet. Mumsnet is a awful pit of transphobia. It's just, oh my god, it is vile. It's just, yeah, don't go there. it's just terrifying. But it is oh no, I do get quite pent up about it, because it is an existential threat to me.
You
know? But at the same time, when I use a woman's facility, when I use a single sex facility that's set up for female people, I am as much at risk there as any other woman is. It's not some magical space that is protected from men.
You're not going to get attacked.
I'm subject to the same risks being.
Do you feel more vulnerable as a female?
Yes. Oh
not
God,
just not just in toilets. In life.
So I mean, I'm not going to pretend I didn't have male privilege when I presented as a man, and that's absolutely true. I did. And the way I perceived that male privilege was through the eyes of a woman, knowing that, you know, recognizing that it wasn't just, it wasn't deserved, that this gender has privilege over other genders. But I still had it. And that gave me the confidence to be able to walk on the street late at night. It gave me the confidence to you know, at work. It gave me a lot of confidence at work, that to know that my skills would not be questioned.
It's unbelievable. It's weird for you to talk about it, because obviously you've seen it literally from both sides, but in a true fashion. It's
what I found, and this is remarkable. So after I transitioned, I thought, am I still employable as a transgender woman? Am I still as employable as I used to be? Because I was a contractor at the time, so I was dependent on like contracts every few months and going for interviews all the time.
Yeah.
And I'd usually just walk into a job because they needed someone, I was available, I'd just go there. So I thought, am I still employable? So I actually applied for 4 jobs. And I went for 4 interviews. One was a telephone interview. Out of those 4 interviews, 3 were face-to-face, one was a telephone interview. I got 3 offers. The one I didn't get was the phone interview, and they told me I didn't get it because I didn't have enough skill in application architecture, which was absolutely true. I didn't.
All right.
But the agent who put me in touch with that job said, I've got a better one. It's at Arm in Cambridge. And I went, I've always wanted to work for Arm, and put me in touch with them, and that's where I work now.
Oh, what's Arm?
So it's a company that makes the designs chips for mobile phones.
Oh, right.
So which every single mobile phone, every iPhone, every Samsung, they've all got ARM chips in them.
Oh, right.
ARM doesn't make the chips, Samsung does, Apple does. They'll make the chips, but ARM designs them.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so I was worried about that. I was worried about being employable, but I needn't worry. But again, how much of that is because male privilege taught me how to do interviews in a way that men want to do?
Yeah.
And that's that. You know, I will never know. I can see, I can experience it from both sides, but am I looking at it through a kind of filtered lens?
Yeah, and was it just the right place at the right time? And, you know, would you have got the job either way?
I suppose another thing is the style of questions was different.
Really?
Yes. And this is really difficult to try and explain, but they seem less technical. The questions I get,
is it like you know that what's it called, the old boys company type thing,
the old boys club, where like,
does that exist?
Yeah. There is, I suppose so. I know I have got jobs on the past based on who I knew that I was recommended, but that was because I'd worked with those people and they knew that I was capable and competent, and so I didn't feel that was unjust. And I still had to go through an interview process to get that role as well. It wasn't like they just phoned me up and said, "I'll start on Monday." I still had to go through an interview process. But I was worried, and so I made sure that these 4 jobs that I applied for were with people that didn't know me, that I hadn't worked with before. That the first time they'd meet me was you know, when I walked into the office. So it was, but I did find the style of questioning was slightly different. That the interviews became slightly more formal, and I felt like almost like I was being challenged, not on my knowledge, but more on how I'd fit in.
Yeah.
And it was like there were fewer technical. There were technical questions that were challenging, but it was more about my personality than my capability. And that was significantly different from interviews I'd had in the past. And I don't know if that was just, you know, those particular interviews, that the style of the people who were
like you say,
interviewing
it's
me.
hard to judge, isn't it?
It's hard to judge.
You had 4 interviews, so you know that was, if it happened over all 4, then that's a pretty good.
Yes. Yeah. It was a marked difference. Now, and you know, I don't know how representative it is of, you know, how what women experience in interviews. But yes, it was different.
I think that was my question, was about how you've been perceived as a woman and how you notice the differences. I think you've kind of covered that there.
It's interesting there. I had, I mean, obviously, people were constantly asking me to fix their IT stuff.
Sorry.
Most of the time I didn't break it. But, there was so my ex-wife's boyfriend, I said he previously was a friend, and he did say, he used to come to me with all his technical, he only works in IT, but he's not that technical, so he'd often come through with his technical issues. And after I transitioned, he stopped. And he actually acknowledged it. He said to me, I assumed that because you're female, you don't know as much about IT.
Yeah.
Said,
See, my perception of you hasn't changed, has it?
Yeah, but he actually acknowledged that. He said that he'd felt that, and he realised that it was wrong. But it's still something that he had to kind of address in his own perception, that he equated IT knowledge with masculinity. And I think that might be why my experience of interviews changed.
Yeah.
That there was that perception that women don't know as much about IT, therefore we have to focus the questions on more soft skills. And it's I think that is part of it.
Yeah. It's like, how can she make tea? Can she make tea? Will she make us laugh and give us a bit of a light relief in the office? That's what it boils down to.
It's horrible, but there was an element of that.
Yeah. Obviously, I experienced a lot of that when I was in the police. It's like a big old male-driven job, career. And, there were jobs but then sometimes you can use it to your advantage. You can sort of like, if there's like a dead deer that's been knocked over, and it's like, you can flutter your eyelashes and say, can you come and help me clear it off the road?
There are skills that they're only available to female people.
Yeah.
And one in particular was, I don't know if this is, I was in a meeting about some project where IT security was going to get in the way. That they didn't want to do all the IT security stuff, and because it was hard, and so they basically got the project manager, the technical architect, and the vendor of the system that they were trying to put in. They got them all around the table and invited me in, so they could basically hound me into saying they didn't have to do any IT security. And they brought their own IT security consultant who was going to back them up.
So
it was basically four of them against me. And at one point, when this security consultant was saying, well, hackers are going to break in anyway, I just did this.
That's not an attitude to have.
Are you telling me, as an IT security professional, that you shouldn't apply any security controls? He crumbled. He just fell apart. And from that point, I knew I'd won the meeting. I got my way. But I don't think I could have done that.
It's hilarious.
Presenting as a man, that wouldn't have worked. So there are skills.
Yeah. You've joined the secret club of women where we can. There's lots of skills we can use and ways in which we can manipulate men. Well, the club. Anyway, I think we should probably leave it there for now.
We should. Yeah, I'm massively enjoying it. And
yeah, me too. I've still got so many more questions, but I'm aware that we're probably heading towards a 3-hour point.
I've lost track. When did I last look? Yeah, it is about that.
Is it?
No, it's about 2 hours.
Oh, thank you though. Thank you for all your lovely words of wisdom and the things you've
wise.
It's a wonderful insight into your world. So thank you. And it takes a lot for you to talk about this, on a platform that is probably going to all God willing go out into the ethos.
Yes, yeah, it will be out there for a while, won't it?
Yeah.
Bated breath to see how many like it.
And I do think that it's nice for. It'll be rewarding for you to see some of the feedback. I think I'm hoping. I mean, obviously, I'll be careful where I share it and that sort of thing. But you never know. It might help somebody along the way.
I hope so. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff out there, but there's a lot of negativity. I mean, I'm on Twitter all the time, and I'm constantly. I have to block so many people on Twitter because of the abuse that these people get on there.
Yeah,
and the abuse that people who support trans people get on there as well.
Yeah,
it's shocking. So having a good block list is something I'd highly recommend if you're going to venture onto Twitter.
Yes. Well, I'm not on Twitter, so you'll have to. I make myself sound like I'm a complete novice in this sort of thing. I'm not. I just you know, I'm just not.
Yeah. My kids don't do that. They go on Instagram rather than Twitter.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, but I like to practice what I preach. I mean, I don't let my children go on the internet and on screens too much. So if I spend too much time, I think I'm a hypocrite.
Yes,
so, you know,
very true.
And also I've got goats and chickens and land and vegetables.
You've got so much more to do, haven't you?
Yeah, I don't want to get to the end of my life and think all I did was sit on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm in danger of doing that.
But that's just me, you know. I know there's a lot to get, and you know, it's easy to sort of get on there and 2 hours have gone and it's like, what have I actually done, you know?
Yeah, no, and I found myself getting so wound up and so stressed that, you know, I'm seeing all these people hounding my friends and and decrying trans rights, and it's just it's such a negative atmosphere.
And it really does affect you physically, doesn't it?
And it affects you mentally and physically, and it makes you tired and it brings you down. And
negative energy.
Yes.
Yeah, we want with this. My little vodcast is all about positive energy and about giving people an opportunity to say, you know, hopefully without too much interruption, you know, just to be able to not put the record straight, because there isn't a record to put straight, but just a platform to speak from. It's nice, isn't it?
And I hopefully that the message that's come through from me, from my experience, having had such a negative life of putting on a mask and trying to be someone I'm not, and not being fulfilled, from going from that to being euphoric about who I am, that I am able to live my life now. That people see me when they look at me, and I can't overemphasize how much that means. That the look on people's face when they, you know, when I was on the street, in the high street, a couple of months ago, and a woman said to a child, "Oh, mind this lady," and it's just natural. It just comes out, and it's not. She's not being politically correct. She's actually seen me, and like that 12-year-old girl who was recognised as a girl by her supply teacher.
I know. I can see how much that means to you. That really, I really can, and that's so lovely to see that, because I've known you from the beginning of the journey, and it's so, you know, you're still there, you're still you, and I think I just met you back then.
You did. Yeah, you did. In fact, that was I think, what was I wearing at the time? I must have been wearing a dress when we met.
Black rubber.
Something like that.
I think I was too.
I think you were, yeah. It was very nice.
Bless your heart.
Anyway, it's been lovely talking to you.
Yes, and like I say, I've got lots more to ask, so we will have to do a part 2, a part 3, a part 4.
Let's do more, and if you're doing a group chat, I'll join that as well.
Oh yeah, that would be wonderful.
Always call on me if you need me.
Yeah, thank you. You're actually going to have to show me how to stop this, because I can't.
I've got to stop it now. You made me host.
Oh yes.
Bye.
Bye, love. Thank you. Love you.